Hogart the Hedgehog turns Nink. Words by Blair Reeve. Pictures by Chris Stapp. On a breezy fall's eve in the village of Snorning, as the village storm warner was shouting his warning, and the people of Snorning were dining and yawning, far down the main road on the south village edge, still sifting his dreams for their gold with a dredge, lay Hogart the Hedgehog asleep 'neath a hedge. Soon a breeze gusted under the edge of his slumber, and carried within it the rumbling of thunder, which crackled so loud it awoke him in wonder. But just as 8 voices cheered, "Birthday surprise!" 9 bolts of lightning forked down from the skies, flashing bright zigzags that dazzled his eyes. After pressing the palms of his paws to his sockets, and placing them calmly back into his pockets, the first thing he noticed were 8 bottle rockets, whizzing and fizzing around in the air, with trails of sparks that glowed bright as a flare, and spelled out his name, Hogart P. Hoggardeer. All around him his family and friends began clapping, Hogart the Hedgehog, so famed for his napping, that even on birthdays he missed the unwrapping of gifts he had left in the nests of his sons, his daughters and cousins, their dads and their mums, and nephews and nieces and other loved ones. Now the Hoggardeer family were sociable creatures, though it has to be said their most prickly of features was the forthright and eloquent tone of their speeches. "Many thanks," Hogart said, "for your octet of cheers, and the lovely surprise of your 8 birthday flares, but folks, you should know, I'm one more than 8 years." "One more than 8 years?" Hogart's family replied. "That's correct," Hogart said, "but it can't be denied that few hedgehogs live beyond 7. He sighed. Then he stuck out his feet and said, "Here's how it goes. A hedgehog counts years by the number of toes on his feet at the rear, and that's how he knows."
"So you're out of rear toes?" said his first cousin Marty. "Well, don't let that spoil tonight's birthday party, 'cause we're all gearing up to throw you a hearty old blast of a bash and a loud sing-along. So let's get the cake lit, let's bang on the gong, let's rouse the whole family to join us in song." But a plucky granddaughter of Hogart's named Truffle pushed out through the crowd, making quite a kerfuffle, and ordered those hogging the front row to shuffle aside a few steps, saying, "Please, we must wait. We're 1 candle short. No, we can't celebrate till we find out what number comes next after 8. She then turned to Hogart. "You always loved learning, and striving and struggling and wriggling and yearning to get to the crux of the problems concerning such curious things as what number comes next. If there's one thing about you the whole town expects, it's that you'll work it out when a crux has you vexed." Well, Hogart was moved, so he shifted and smiled and tried to explain to this spirited child, "When I was your age, I was fearless and wild. I crossed the vast pasture, explored the wide wood. I roamed around Snorning through each neighbourhood. I followed my nose anywhere that smelled good. But a hedgehog who's younger is braver and bolder than one who is older with cricks in his shoulder and rickety legs that won't hold him," he told her. Then a thought caught him out. Why not one final trip? It might bump this lump that has hardened my hip, and bring back the zing that I've lost from my skip." And the more that he thought it, the more he decided. Young Truffle is right. I don't want to be chided for shunning this chance, when I have always prided myself on my deftness for jumping the gate, and refusing to leave any choosing to fate. And I do want to know what comes next after 8. So Hogart asked Marty to pass his umbrella, then headed outside and said,
Sorry, old fella, I may be an ancient nest-building hedge-dweller of unsteady gait and a build that's too slight, but this problem needs someone to solve it tonight, so the party's postponed. I'll be home by first light. Then he hobbled uphill in his stripy pyjama, quite sure he could find out, with minimal drama, the answer somewhere in that vast panorama of hilltops and field crops and paddocks and brooks, where a great many critters were nestled in nooks, and some not so nice ones like badgers and rooks. Now, although a hedgehog is at his most cheerful when roaming around, he should always be careful to avoid any varmints who make themselves fearful, like foxes and hawks with a nocturnal eye, or ferrets and stoats whose abundance of sly and slick ways to trap prey can turn prey into pie. At the top of the hill, Hogart kept very quiet, awaiting some rumpus, disturbance or riot to break out below where he'd easily spy it, with his smell and his hearing directing his gaze through the leaves of the trees and the rain-gauzy haze that floated on top of the soybeans and maize. Soon he heard a commotion of flapping and sobbing, and spied on the hillside a red robin bobbing her head up and down and her tiny breast throbbing. So he sidled on over and, keeping alert, watched as she struggled to haul from the dirt a terrified worm for her evening dessert. Then Hogart spoke up. "Well, excuse me there, squire. I won't keep you long, but I'd like to inquire whether you or the earthworm can count any higher than a hedgehog who lives in such humble estate he's never had reason to count beyond 8. Or if not, a friend who could help out a mate?" Before she could answer, the worm began pleading. "That's your concern? Well, my poor heart is bleeding. Consider my nightmare. This robin is feeding her body with mine. Oh, the horror! The strife! If I can't count to 1, then my problems are rife, for I count on my body to get me through life." The robin, displeased with this heated-on treaty, puffed up her chest and said, "Listen here, sweetie, that's a juicy objection, both tender and meaty, but a worm is nutritious, and if not for you, then I can't count on these." She flapped one wing, then 2. Then she snatched up the worm, and away she hoo, hoo! The sky filled with owl, its colossal wings beating some creep of a creature whose 4 feet went fleeting away down the hill to some other foul meeting. And the flap-happy robin wove off towards town with a worm in her feet. He was wearing a frown as he watched Hogart cringe and the talons come down. Hogart went airborne. It happened so quickly that, turvy-whirled topsy, he felt awful sickly. His hackles went up and his whole body prickly. But the owl didn't mind, for its talons were strong, and a crestfallen Hogart sensed things going wrong. "I've let my guard down. There goes my swan song." But he bucked up and bellowed, "You're foiling my mission to find me a counter, an ace mathematician who can rescue a birthday with simple addition. I insist you release me and promptly disclose the name and location of someone who knows how to count like a pro and do sums on his toes." The owl smiled down. "You're rather demanding for a hedgehog just breezily, casually standing exposed on a hilltop as if he were handing himself to a foe, whether feathered or furred. I came to your aid after hearing the word you were having back there with the earthworm and bird. See, I know of a species who tally statistics and tap dance the answers to complex logistics on legs that hold secrets known only to mystics. Even quantum mechanics is just a wee game to the centipede famed for its curious claim that to know how to count is to know how to name." "You've lost me," said Hogart. "But thanks for suggesting this centipede thing who can help with my questing. The sooner I find one, the sooner I'm resting back home under hedge in my comfortable bed." But Hogart felt nervous. His nerves turned to dread. "How mammoth its body! How massive its head!" "We hedgehogs and robins and earthworms are little, and natures are tough, but our livelihood's brittle, and the highest amount we can count is a tittle. But this centipede, with its armies of legs, has a brain box so large that it measures in megs the length of its memory, the width of its eggs." The owl, swooping low, said, "I'll drop you off over this backcountry meadow covered in clover. There's a centipede here, she's a fast-moving rover, so you're bound to cross paths. But first, let me advise, before we part ways and we say our goodbyes, us owls have a motto: wide eyes are wood wise." After rolling to rest in a wet, muddy wallow, Hogart found footprints he thought he would follow, but they trailed off into a shadowy hollow where a badger-shaped lump lay in sleepy repose. "Don't panic," thought Hogart, but shortly he froze. The lump had awoken. It was snuffling its nose. Now the thing about badgers, it ought to be noted, is they always top most loathsome foe polls, as voted by the Hedgehog Security Council, as quoted. So Hogart's alarm was routine, common sense, but a badger can trigger a fright so intense that the hedgehog rolls into a ball of defence. Now a spiny back acts like the shell of a turtle. It hurts to chew through, it can prove a real hurdle, and it causes the bowels and intestines to curdle. When the badger approached this inedible sphere, it nuzzled and nosed, but it couldn't get near the soft underbelly which held Hogart's fear. From his small fetal ball, Hogart hollered, "My dairy! I've a friend dropping by so bad-temperedly scary that even your predators know to be wary of her centipede pincers, so fierce and so foul, when she wields them and lets out a hair-raising howl. Your enemies cower, bear, fox, eagle, owl." Hogart believed it. His tone was convincing. The badger imagined those huge pincers pincing, and flinched in its chicken skin, visibly wincing. "And this hostile hedgehog, which smells a bit rough round its muddy wet spines, looks too chewy and tough. Not worth it," it thought, so it left in a huff. "Hoo-ha!" laughed a voice just outside Hogart's vision. "That bone-headed badger deserves your derision. Stay still," the voice shrilled, "for the sake of precision. You've 6,561 spines. That's a root sum of 9 with 9 factors 2 prime. Few numbers so wholly divide to the nines." Hogart unfurled to see the centipede tapping her toes in a flurry as she kept up the yapping and rattling off math like a grandmaster rapping. "So a hedgehog in danger can count on his spine 6,561 times. That's a perfect square number with a quartic of nines." "Hold your horses," said Hogart. "This math is too knotty for a hedgehog whose knowledge of numbers is spotty, and your talk is so dense that it's driving me dotty. You're a centipede? Really? You're tiny, not big. Neither hairy nor scary, you're just a wee sprig, like an earthworm crossbred with a leggy earwig." "Hoo-ha!" said the centipede. "Gotta get going." And she gave a small smile, sincere and yet knowing. "Wait up," Hogart said. "You're supposed to be showing—" But the centipede stopped him. "Look at the signs. They're pointing you straight to the root of your spines. I don't care to ask why, but your number is 9. As for counting beyond that, it's just a recital.
A sequence of names. For each number, a title. You can name them yourself, though your titles aren't vital.
Then she scuttled away. Hogart sat down to think. So 9 follows 8. But it could have been Nink. It could have been Ning Nong or Rinky Dink Dink. As he rambled on homeward, up hill and down dale, through a forest, a farmyard, and round a hay bale, then slowly along the last stretch of the trail, he thought about numbers, the owl in its nest, the centipede counting, the earthworm at rest, and he tried to recall the results of his quest. By the time he got home, he was ready to slumber. His verve had turned weary, his stride to a lumber, and he nearly forgot the name of the number. I think that it's Nink, but then maybe it's not. Each creature must count on whatever it's got. We hedgehogs are lucky. We've got quite a lot. Then the party got started, with everyone singing, and laughing and dancing and bouncing and springing, and even old Hogart found himself swinging along with his grandkids, his daughters and sons, his nephews and nieces, their dads and their mums, and cousins and dozens of other loved ones.